All right, everybody. This is a special episode right now. We got an interview coming with Shawn Armstrong of the Baltimore Orioles, current MLB pitcher. So I talked to him for about 30 minutes, talked to him about life, about baseball, about the 2020 season, about the Orioles. So like and subscribe if you want more. I'm going to continue to try to get more of these interviews out. I'm here with Shawn Armstrong, pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles. So thanks for talking with me today. Um, so my first question that I have for you is I saw the Orioles, you guys are playing the Phillies tonight. So are you pitching tonight?
No, I mean, I'm not. I won't be pitching tonight. I threw in inter squad last night, and then I'll throw against the Nationals on Tuesday.
All right, nice. So what have you been doing kind of to stay busy during this whole pandemic?
So I mean, when I was back home and everything, I still train a lot of kids. Back home, I have quite a few, national players that are with the Canes and everything else, and I train out of the Performance Academy out of Apex. So I use TrackMan, Rapsodo, all that kind of stuff. So I use a lot of that stuff with my lessons, and fortunately was able to stay busy with that, but also like that keeps me kind of in tune with baseball and kind of takes my mind away from, all right, what am I doing in my delivery today? What do I need to work on? And just kind of lets me kind of also give back as well. And it's kind of cool because when I was there, I actually got 3 seniors the opportunity to go play college baseball. So I mean, it benefited pretty good that they had the opportunity to go play Division III. I think it's 2 Division III and 1 Division I.
Nice.
But they're super stoked about it, and yeah, I mean, so that's what I do in the off seasons, and that's what I was doing, in off season 2.0, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. How do you think, the technology of pitching has changed over the past few years? And do you think it's gotten like crazier, like with younger kids knowing all this other information about pitching? Because like when I was practicing pitching, when I still played, it was all basically just like basic mechanic stuff. There was no like spin rate or any of that other stuff. So how do you think that's changed things?
I think I mean, for the most part, I think the biggest thing is like ultimately you still got to have feel for what you're doing. But like when you're utilizing things like Rapsodo and TrackMan, MLB is using Hawkeye now, which is very similar to TrackMan. It gives you the benefit to be consistent. It's like you see your arm slot, you see your release height, you see your extension, you see your vertical break, horizontal break, all those numbers, and then like you try and literally like once you're working towards a common goal, like for me, like I'm not really making changes trying to create pitches. I'm trying to make my pitches better, but I'm also trying to make my dots as small as an area as possible so that it's consistent. My pitches tunnel, and like I'm not, creating the curveball with like by using my body. I'm not trying to force my cutter, not trying to force my changeup. And it allows guys to like once they understand what the numbers mean, and then once they have that general understanding, they're able to implement that into their stuff. But again, like you have to start from the ground up. You got to be able to feel it. You got to be able to understand what your body's doing before you can just dive into the numbers. I mean, I've done it myself where I've got so caught up in just numbers that I lose feel for what I'm trying to do on the mound. So at the end of the day, you still have to, understand what your body's doing, the movement patterns, and the biggest thing, you try and do is move efficiently down the mound. So, like by doing that and, like I said, utilizing the numbers, it just helps you solidify what your main common goal is.
Right. Do you think kids are pretty receptive to getting all that information and then actually translating it to making changes with their mechanics?
I definitely think so. I mean, the kids that I've been working with, I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a freshman that I started working with this past November, two-way guy. He plays football and baseball. He's a quarterback and a pitcher. So, like, you see a lot of the short arm slots and everything where it matches. But when he puts a baseball in his hand, he's very long. He's very whippy. It's polar opposite of the football. So, like we made some like mechanical changes with him, but then once he started understanding the numbers and visibly seeing them, putting those into work and everything, he went from touching, 79, 80 to touching 87,
Wow.
with a matter of 4 months. And then, I have another junior who he's 6'4", his extension was at like 4'11" to 5'2", which was like it's way off for him, but his stuff really good. So like we started working on his delivery. Like I said, going back to the basics, him understanding what the train is, how the arm is not everything. If you have to use total body. And, his last outing, I mean, he was 78, 79 as well as a junior, touching 83. In his last outing, he hit 89 7 times. So, like it's just like little things like that. And, the 7 or 8 guys that I was working with back home during the offseason 2.0, they all made, 5 to 6 mile an hour adjustments within about 8 weeks just by, making mechanical changes, but also by reading the numbers, understanding the spin axis, like showing them, hey, you shape this one with your body versus letting your hand do the work. And them seeing, visually on slow-mo, visually like the axis and the dots and like all that kind of stuff. And like I said, you got to let them understand what their body's doing first, and then you match it with the numbers and let them kind of get an understanding for that, and it just simplifies it for them. I don't dive into all the numbers that I look at. I keep it simple for those guys. But I've seen where it really, really benefits them.
Cool. So going back to kind of the start of your career, I saw that you were drafted out of high school, but then opted to go to college instead. So kind of what went through that decision and do you still think that you made the right decision by going to college instead of going right to pros?
Yeah, so my junior year, I was, around 88, touching 92, 93. And then, going into my fall, I was touching 97, 98 of my senior year. And I was actually projected to go first round or supplemental first. And I actually ended up tearing my labrum the last high school game that I played. So, I mean, definitely benefited me to go to college, and it was a no-brainer after that. But, going back and looking at where I was, as a senior in high school to where I was as a redshirt sophomore in college, mentally, no, I was not ready for pro ball. I wasn't ready for the speed of the game. I wasn't, because like when you get to pro ball, yes, it's about development, but you also got to understand that when you're getting into pro ball as, 18, 19-year-old guy, you're one of 100 guys out in Arizona or Florida with 2 or 3 pitching coaches. So like you don't have the 15 pitchers with one pitching coach where you really get the one-on-one time. You do, but it's like you're a fish in a big pond, and you got to really understand yourself and understand what it takes and really put in the work and the time yourself. And you don't have the dad figure as a baseball, as your college coach who gets your butt in gear to really take control of all that stuff. So I mean, for me, mentally, I'm really happy, and honestly, physically for me, I learned a lot about shoulder programs, weightlifting, cardio, just the pace of play of the game, understanding like different situations. So it definitely benefited me to go to school.
Nice. So when you get drafted and then you decide, to sign with that team, kind of what goes through that process? Because like a lot of times, like especially with the Major League Baseball draft, I don't even think it's all completely televised now, and it's not a whole event like in the NFL and NBA. So kind of what goes through that process after your name gets put up on the board?
Yeah, so the year I got drafted in 2011 was the last year where they could really do the draft and follow, because I think the signing date then was August 22nd, and now I think you have a month or 5 weeks or whatever after the deadline to sign. So I was a draft and follow, because whenever I got drafted, I turned down 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 9th, and 10th round because of me only being 20 years old and still having the leeway to have another 2 years of school to be able to kind of coming back from shoulder surgery. So like I knew what my number was. And for me, Cleveland took me in the 18th round. They're like, hey, we know what your figure is, and we want to watch you pitch this summer. So I made 9 in the Coastal Plains League. And I actually ended up calling the Indians on, that was going to be my last start. And I just told them, I was like, hey, like I haven't seen any scouts here. It's summer ball. There's not a lot of, like, who's there for the most part. I was just like, this is my last start. College is shutting me down due to innings limit. And I was actually moved in my apartment in college. Classes were starting on the 25th, and it was August 22nd at 10:45 at night. And my agent called, and he was like, hey, it's still in the works. Like, they may still sign you. And he called me back at 11:40, 20 minutes before deadline, and was just like, hey, here's the offer. Here's the amount they're going to give you for school. Talk to your parents, see if you want to go. Well, I called my parents like 30 times, no answer. Called coach like 20 times, no answer, because everybody thought it was done. I mean, I thought it was done too. And I actually ended up verbally saying, yeah, I'm going to sign at 11:52, 8 minutes before deadline. So like, then you're unenrolling from school, turning your books back in, moving out of your apartment, like getting all that kind of stuff situated. So, I mean, that was kind of a crazy time for me, but I think, like, obviously besides your first rounders and stuff, I think, there's a lot of negotiations and so forth. Your first rounders, you're going to get paid pretty good money, and that, the way the draft's going, especially with, seniors not being able to sign over a certain amount of money, and after the 10th round, you can't sign. Like, it's a lot different now, but, and obviously the process now is a lot quicker versus, your 9 weeks, 10 weeks that I had, it's only 5 weeks.
Right.
So it was exciting for me, and like I'm really happy with the decision I made to go to pro ball. And I loved college, don't get me wrong, but I've learned a lot in pro ball, and it's really benefited me just going to the bullpen versus a starter like I was in college.
Nice. So when you were in the minor leagues, you always hear these horror stories about like motels and like crazy bus rides and like, I had a professor who played minor leagues for the Brewers. He said like his bus like ran out of gas and they had to walk to a motel. Do you have any crazy, horror stories from being in the minors like that?
Fortunately for me, I never really did, just because, my first year I went from low A to double A, and, Cleveland did a really good job of taking care of, the minor league guys and like the, the environments and stuff. But I mean, I've heard horror stories from other guys, like getting on a 12-hour bus ride and, in the middle of the summer in the Midwest League and the AC goes out and you got nine-hour bus ride with 30 guys on one bus, and, you're down to your underwear on a bus just trying to stay hydrated, and yeah, I mean, the first road trip I went on was in Jamestown, New York, and it was actually a Red Roof Inn that we stayed in. And that when we walked in the room, because when you get drafted, you think of all the glory things and like what you're gonna have, and and then you get humbled a little bit because we walked in the first room and there's mold growing on the ceiling. And it's like this ain't it, And then like you go to pregame spread and it's PB&Js or cold cut sandwiches, like, because it's a tight budget. You don't make a lot of money there either. But I think that's the biggest thing, man, is like it teaches you that, it teaches you to really love the game and understand the experience and understand the grind of what it takes to get to the big leagues. And when you get to the big leagues, you realize like, man, it's everything's worth it, because like it's not easy to get to the big leagues, but it's easier to get to the big leagues. It's very, very hard to stay in the big league. And that's the one thing I tell a lot of guys, like, you may make it, but like for you to set the tone and stay there, that's what's hard to do. I mean, and I've still found myself, struggling with that. So like the consistency is key, and obviously being healthy, right place at the right time. And, now it's just with all the analytics and stuff, you see it, like you don't have your Greg Maddoxes and stuff like that very much anymore. Everybody wants 95 plus, like Bowman for us. He came up and threw an inter squad today, 21-year-old guy, and looks like, Samardzija for the Giants, like 6'4", 240 brick house.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy, everybody's looking at this dude like that's a grown man, at 21 years old, and he's just huge. So I mean, it's like it's just the guys are different now, but also like the biggest, like I said, that like it just helps you understand and respect the grind, and it makes everything worth it.
Right. So while you were in the minor leagues, you got traded to the Orioles. What was it like, kind of like, how did you get told that you were going to be traded? And then what were your first thoughts and kind of how did that all go down?
So the first time I was traded, I went from Cleveland to Seattle in 2017 in December. And I was really thrown off kind of literally, because I spent, over half the year up with them that year. And, I ended up going to Seattle. I mean, it was mixed emotions. I was excited for, new scenery. But at the same time, like you go from somewhere where you've been for 6 years and you know everybody, they taught you everything about pro ball. They taught you the way about pro ball. And, and then you're also going from Cleveland, where I'm from North Carolina, to the polar opposite side of the country, to Seattle. And, I was excited, but, I got over there and, I was having a pretty good spring and ended up getting DFA'd for Ichiro. And, it humbled me a little bit. It's like, hey, you can either sit around and mope and be pissed off, or you can, be hungry, and go out and get what you want. And it actually ended up being the best season that I've ever had, in the minor leagues and going up to the major leagues and putting up a 1-3, that season when I got called up. And then I actually ended up getting DFA'd last spring after or last April coming off an oblique tear. And the Orioles gave me an opportunity, and I'm super thankful for them, and I love what they're doing here as well. But yeah, I mean the process, is like it's not really like you don't have like 4 or 5 days. Like like the last time I got DFA, we were waiting to see if I get claimed. My wife and my dog are sitting in Seattle, and we get a phone call at 10 a.m. on a Sunday from the Orioles saying, "Hey, we've claimed you. Yada yada yada. When can you be here?" And I'm like, I'm in Seattle with my dog, my wife, like got to pack everything. They're like, all right, you're going to have a flight tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. And so we had really 24 hours to get everything packed up, find someone to ship my car, get everything, and then we were in Baltimore the next day by, 3 p.m. And then I'm in Chicago the following day, in an Oriole uniform waiting to play. So, I mean, it's when it comes to the trades and all that kind of stuff, unless it's like you're a contract guy where the GM like is really going to kind of let you know ahead of time. Like, I mean, I've heard guys found out on Twitter that they've been traded.
Yeah.
Like announced there, but before they even know. So I mean, this game, it happens so quick, and it's a business. So like, you don't have a lot of time to plan. Like I can get a phone call right now saying, "Hey, you've been traded," and you got 24 hours to get your stuff together and leave. So like, there's not a window. So like, it's be ready. You're always on your toes, but it's also kind of the fun part of the game too.
Right. So as a relief pitcher, it's kind of like, you don't play regularly, you're not an everyday player, and then you can go on stretches over periods of time where you either do very well or very poorly. So how hard is it to either mentally be kind of like where you are right now, or just look at your whole season numbers and think like, oh, I'm playing well or I'm not playing well?
I think that's the biggest thing, as a reliever, because I mean, like you look across the league and you have guys that really stand out, but like also, like for instance, me last year, like, I had a rough start, then I had a really good, stretch, with the Orioles and everything. And then, come August, September, I had 2 outings where I gave up 4 runs each, and it took my ERA from a low 4 to a high 5. So like as a reliever, you have me, I have 1 inning, 1+ at the most. So like, if you get caught up in the numbers, and I've done it, believe me, like we all have. I mean, that's what this game is based off of, is numbers. But if you get caught up in the numbers and consistently just looking at your, your box scores, your baseball reference or whatever like that, like it can be a cruel game and mentally, because it's like, if that's all you're worried about, you're taking away from what you're doing at the field. So, I mean, and relievers, the beauty of it is, you go out and get beat that day, you're not a starter. You don't have to wait 5 days. Like, like you're going to be right back in there a day off, 2 days off, whatever it is, to get that opportunity. And I think that's, the difference in from the big leagues to minor leagues to college. Like, college, you're making adjustments inning to inning. Minor leagues, you're trying to make, adjustments outing to outing. And then, batter to batter as you get up to the higher levels, AA, AAA, and then big leagues, you don't have batter to batter to make adjustments. You got to make adjustments pitch to pitch. So, I mean, and that's where it comes to, body awareness and understanding what you're doing. But you can't stay caught up in the numbers, man. Now, when you're cruising and you see those numbers, like, yeah, it's kind of icing on the cake,
Yeah.
like you don't really look at them like that once you're cruising, like, but if you're consistently worried about it when you're, doing or struggling, it's only going to make things worse. So like staying in the moment, and once you, cross those lines, go in the dugout, you got to let everything go,
Right.
and like I've struggled with it in my career, but like my wife tells me that all the time, and like that's some advice that you really got to, stay intact and stay humble, is once you leave that field, you got to let it go and move on to the next day.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah. So what is it like? I saw that last year you had 8 straight scoreless appearances from like May to June. So what is it like when you're locked in and you're coming to the field every day? And like, what are you trying to work on, or is it just kind of you get into a routine?
Yeah, it's definitely routine based, man. So like, I'm very, very meticulous about my routine and what I do. And, if I don't do my routine that day, I feel all thrown off. So, like that's something that, teams really do a good job of in teaching, and, at the minor league level, is developing a routine, developing, that day in and day out. developing the routine that you're going to do on, hey, you're off today, relax mentally, physically, and you figure out what you're going to kind of do on that. So, I mean, for me, it's definitely routine based. No matter if I'm struggling, I'm going to go out there and get some extra work, dry work on the mound, do some stuff with the coaches, get some dry work with my plyo balls and stuff before I go out and everything like that. But as far as like the preparation, soft tissue, stretching, mobility, dynamic warm-ups, your lifts, you got to stay intact. You got to stay on that stuff each and every day. I mean, I'm a guy that works, for Eric Cressy remotely. And, by doing the stuff that he has for my body and everything, like I've really seen some really good outcomes for what I've been trying to accomplish. And other than that, man, like stick to your routine. Obviously, you got to make changes here and there. I mean, I don't do the same routine that I did when I was 21 years old. I'm turning 30 here, so I got to do a little bit different stuff. I got to lift different ways. I can't go up and throw up 500 pounds on a squat rack before a game, like I used to. So, like, it's different things like that you really kind of – but that's also general understanding of your body as your career, prolongs and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely routine-based. But you got guys like Wade LeBlanc for us who, he's starting a couple of days ago, an inter squad and 7 o'clock game. He's sitting in his locker at 6:30. Hasn't really done much, but that's what he does to relax his mind, relax his body, and he goes out and deals. So, everybody's different. Everybody finds what works for them, and I think that's the biggest thing is what works for you. Don't go off what other people are doing.
Do you ever find it difficult to, like, when you get to a new team or it's just the start of a season or there's a new player on your team and they're a starting pitcher, do you find it difficult to figure out what their routine is and try to not get in their way?
I mean, as far as like a starting pitcher and stuff, like obviously if you get like I've never been a part of where like a Max Scherzer gets traded over and like where he doesn't want anybody to talk to him on start day. Like I mean that's pretty much known around the league. But like coming up with Cleveland where I had Kluber, I had Tomlin, I had Carrasco, Clevenger, like Bauer, those guys. Like you find their routines, but also like when we're getting to the ballpark and stretch at 3:30, they're showing up at 4:15, 4:30 when we're out in the field for BP, that kind of stuff. So like you're not really in their way, and if you are like, like it's one of like some guys don't care, but like, other guys you kind of know, like, the veterans take that upon themselves, but hey, this is their schedule. Don't like, you're not in the training room at this time, you're not in the hot tub at this time. Like, but again, like I'm an early bird when it comes to the field. I'm there, 5-6 hours before the game. I won't be this year because of all the rules and everything, but I mean, I think once you kind of develop that routine, you get in that pattern and you see what they're doing in spring training, you see what they're doing, and see everything flows smoothly, man, for the most part.
Yeah, sounds good. So going on to kind of this season and kind of, it's been such a mess, it seems, from like me being a fan and being on the outside. You kind of see all these headlines like, oh, it's going to start here. It's going to be X amount of games. Oh, now it's not. One of like the original things going back to March or April or May was that there could be, kind of like what the NBA is doing with a bubble. Do you think that would have worked? Like if they did, like kind of the league split between Arizona and Florida, and would you have played?
I mean, yeah, I definitely would have played, man. I mean, this would be a full season for me to get to arbitration, I'm definitely playing, and it's like, I don't have anything holding me back, from playing. And some of the guys that are opting out, like I respect their decisions completely, like you can't hold that from them. It's not like they're, hey, I'm opting out, I'm going to take my money and just run. Like they're not getting paid, like they're going to get the service time because they have legitimate reasons, but like that's their personal decision. But as far as the bubble, man, I don't think it would have worked for baseball because like, how do you have 3 locations with 10 teams per location, and you got to have infielders get 3 innings, for a few days, 5 innings for a few days, 7 innings for a few days into a max, game, and then you have infield, outfield, you have private conversations between signs, signals, what we're doing here, what we're doing there. Like there's no privacy. So I mean we're still doing Zoom calls now talking about signs and everything
Shawn
else like
Armstrong
that.
will be the new pitcher for Cleveland.
Staggered sessions at the field, but I think for baseball, man, especially for grounds crew, like you're trying to have 10 teams on one field trying to get stuff done. Like I don't see how that would have worked out. I mean, our sanitation policy and stuff for the Orioles alone with just us is crazy, but they've done a phenomenal job, to keep us as healthy and locked in and like to kind of as normal as possible. So like when you go to having 300 bodies versus 30 bodies, in a locker room, like coming in and out of locker rooms, just no chance. Like I don't think there's any way it would work, especially when someone tests positive or whatever, everything shuts down, everything's got to be sanitized. There's no way it would work.
Just getting called up today.
That's definitely interesting with the grounds crew. I definitely did not think about that.
Yeah, I mean, like who's there, 12 hours a day with one team.
Mm-hmm.
Still has to be, the parents for, TV games. They still want it to look nice. Obviously big league players, you want it to have, good playing services. So like, it'd be tough. It'd be really hard to, really accomplish that.
Do you think that there are any current rules like for COVID that are just unrealistic, like with seed spitting or like, people packing lips or just anything like that?
No, I don't think so, man. I mean, it's just because, like, being an airborne sickness, like, and like how you can pass it on just from, like spit particles, just talking one to one. I don't think that it's out of ordinary, because for one, like, reserves, they're sitting in the stands, they're not sitting in the dugout. So, like, I mean, if you have a guy up there spitting seeds or chewing and just spitting in the stadium, like you don't have the people that they're going to come through and like clean up behind like the stands and everything. So like as a sanitation purposes, like it makes sense, and every like for my routine, which is like I said, very kind of down to the second to what I do, before the game. Like I don't think there's any rules that they've done. Obviously it takes some getting used to, running on treadmills, lifting and face mask, like having to wear gloves like everywhere you go in the weight rooms and wearing double mask and hot tubs. And I mean, it's just an adjustment, man. Like everybody's got to do it. It's not like, hey, you have to do this, nobody else. It's like, it's all as one. We're all in it. Like we're all in here for the same common goal, and that's to play 60 games and get the playoffs. So, everybody's got a good understanding of what we want to do and how we want to accomplish it. So like, I don't think that they've done anything that's just like, no, that's not going to happen. So, I mean, like again, like the Orioles have done a great job, and I haven't been uncomfortable or anything like that since we've been here.
Nice. So do you think that the lack of fans, do you think it's going to be a distraction? Do you think it's going to help some players play better without crowd noise, like on the road? How do you think that's all going to figure out?
I mean, like, so when I came in the game on Thursday, we were implementing the crowd noise that MLB is giving each team and all that stuff. So, I mean, I still was amped up. We asked like Asher Wojciechowski for us, like we had to go 5 innings. So, like, were you pumped up? He's like, I was amped. I was ready to go. This crowd noise blaring over the speakers, everything else. And, it's really not like, obviously it's different because you don't have 30,000, 40,000 people, screaming. You don't have away fans yelling at you, talking junk to you, which is the fun part of it. Like, I mean, that's like, obviously that's going to take some getting used to, but, I think for the younger guys, it's a kind of a refresher because you don't have, you're being watched on TV, but you're not running into like my debut where it was 49,000 people there. Like, you're not going to have that, but, at the same time, like, you still got to find it within you to get amped up. You still got to find it within you to use that intent, So, like, and I think that just comes with passion of the game and, loving to play the game. Like I played yesterday or my first 2 outings here, there was not even infielders. It was just me facing batters, and I'm still amped up trying to get my own teammates out. But I think once other teams start stepping in the box again, you're going to find it. It's going to be there. The adrenaline's going to be there. You're going to be ready to go because it's a sprint, man. It's 60 games. It's not 162. Like you got to come out the gates hot to win. And, like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited and it's going to be different, but, we're also giving the fans the ability to watch something on TV.
Yeah. So for my final question, so a lot of people are counting the Orioles out. Obviously, like the Yankees are probably one of the better teams in baseball going into the season. But as you said, it's a sprint. Anything can happen, and teams are playing against their division opponents more than ever. So who on the Orioles do you think is going to open some eyes for fans that don't really know?
I mean, we're a very young team, man, and like I think it really helps us to have Alex Cobb back. You know, I think like having him back is going to be, you know, essential for our starting rotation. You know, Hunter Harvey's going to be a lot of fun to watch for us. I mean, he's got electric stuff. I mean, everybody's seen it. Cody Carroll, who had back surgery, you know, like I saw him in spring. He's been up to 99. You know, Tanner Scott, like he's been up to 101, 102 from the left side. You know, and like, I mean, we got some good guys. I mean, but, you know, he opened some eyes last year too, but Anthony Santander, I mean, that guy's a stud. He's a stud in the outfield. He's a stud in the box. Like, he's a tough hitter, you know, and also watching, you know, Iglesias take infield day in and day out, like this crazy stuff he does with the glove and the range and the way he hits. I mean, his approach to the plate. So, I mean, we got a really good core, man. And like I said, I think Anthony Santander is going to really surprise me. But I think the biggest standout for me and the way that he really does his stuff day in and day out on the field, off the field, in the weight room, Austin Hayes, man. I can't say enough about that guy. Like, I mean, if he can stay healthy, just because he is balls to the wall every single play, you know, like laying out, jumping the fence, running into walls. I mean, and that, like, he'll die for that ball, you know, to get that out for you no matter who's on the mound. So, like, seeing him play and also at the Dishman, like I think he's got a potential to win a Gold Glove, and I also think he's an all-star caliber player. So I mean, I'm not counting us out. You know, like I mean, obviously, like there's better rotations, there's better bullpens. You know, there's better lineups. Like as far as like what you look at numbers from last year or what's on paper, you know, but you know, paper only goes so long, you know, like in like we can come out and surprise some people. You know, we played really competitive baseball in spring training. Yeah, that's spring training. Like I agree, you know, but like we were playing together. Like it wasn't like, hey, I'm going out here to get mine. It's like everybody's helping one another. Like today I watched, I was actually shagging for live BP for Bowman and Aiken. And I looked up in the bullpen and Stewart is throwing a bullpen, and there's 7 pitchers up there, all the starters and long relievers watching his bullpen. You know, like, and that's the camaraderie that we're trying to build here. That's the camaraderie that the Orioles are trying to build. They're trying to build that. Hey, this is one family. It's not one person. It's one team, one effort, one win. Like you know, one day at a time. We're not looking at tomorrow. We're looking at today. You know, and I think as long as we stay in that hallway and have that tunnel vision of hey, today's game. Like today for us, we're playing the Phillies. We're not worried about the Nationals tomorrow. You know, like, and we stay in that, like, you know, we're going to go out and play competitive baseball. And hey, if we end up looking up and there's 35 wins, 40 wins, whatever it is, you know, on like in the record, whatever, like, I mean, that's awesome, you know, but we're not going to go out there and give up no matter what people say, like, no matter what our record was last year, we're going to come out and we're going to compete and we're going to try and beat whoever our opponent is that day.
Nice. All right. That's all I had, but thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It's been my pleasure.
Yep. All right. Good luck next season.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Have a good day.